Thank you, thank you. Well, I'm glad you guys all stuck around for this. So before we get started, I will have you type some answers in the chat. So from time to time, I am going to use the chat. So if you know where the chat's located, that'd be fantastic. If you have questions, as we said, just go ahead and put those in the Q&A area, and we'll try to answer those as we go along. But I like to do a little audience participation. So yeah, this is intuition, simulation, and calculation, teaching probability in a pandemic. And I think it could be teaching probability, period. Because I think this idea of this instructional arc of intuition followed by simulation followed by calculation is a really nice way to approach teaching probability. Typically in most classrooms, it is turned around. It is done with calculation first and probably only. And students never get to experience a simulation, and they certainly never get to experience testing their intuition, which is why probability in my mind is so challenging for kids. So what we will do, I've dropped this link in the chat. I want to share with you some useful probability resources. And these resources were offered by the American Statistical Association in what was called March Randomness, which was an awesome March statistics probability activity. And we'll talk more about that. I want to get you involved in this intuition, simulation, calculation approach to teaching probability. And we'll build a couple of random chance objects in GeoGebra. And I'll try to go slow and you can kind of follow along as well. Time permitting, we'll build simulations in GeoGebra, as well as build some calculation things in GeoGebra as well. Again, these links here, if you've got this, if you have this, this document or this activity, these links are there. And again, if you want my contact information, hit me up on Twitter. I'm pretty active on Twitter. And feel free to shoot me an email if there's anything that I can do to help you. So let me start off. This is, oh, I tell you what, with Zoom, everywhere I want Zoom not to be, it is. So, so let me start off. I taught statistics for 8 or 10 years before I moved into my current role as an instructional technology coach and a mathematics coach. And the American Statistical Association, every March, used to run a March Madness activity. Now, if you're not in the United States, you may not be familiar with March Madness, but that is the big college basketball tournament that occurs every March. Well, this past year, there was still quite a bit of uncertainty with COVID on whether or not that basketball tournament would take place. So what the American Statistical Association decided to do is to run a March randomness simulation. And this simulation that was 4 weeks through the month of March, each week you were given 4 scenarios, one a day, four each week for 4 weeks, and that for a total of 16. The scenarios will give you some examples. So, for example, the week 1 challenges is roll a 20-sided die. Let me see if I can do Tim's trick. Oh, I did do Tim's trick. I zoomed in. Roll a 20-sided die and a 30-sided die. Will the sum of the results be at least 20? And so that was the challenge. And then what you would do is you would make a decision, either yes or no. And however confident you were in your decision, you would wager what are called stat coins. And everyone was given 800 stat coins to begin with. I think that's what the number was. And then a famous statistician would actually perform this experiment the next day. So it's kind of like you're making your wager, or you're kind of at like like around the United States, a large church festival, and you're playing one of these chance games. And so they did this throughout the month of March, and it was as much fun as I've had in a long, long time. So it turns out that this game that the American Statistical Association ran, this game was based upon a dice game called Borel. And the link to Borel is here. It's also linked in the GeoGebra activity that you downloaded. And so this game was not available in the United States until maybe this last week or so. I ordered it on Amazon. I was hoping it would be here by today. It was supposed to get delivered yesterday, but it was delayed and it's still not here. So this is the game Borel, and it's less than $20 here in the United States. And so the idea is that you are given different scenarios. So on the right-hand side,
I'm sorry, Steve, if I may, this is actually a physical game. It's not.
This is a physical game. So for example, here is on the right-hand side of the screen is one of the cards, one of the scenarios. Roll. Oh, I tell you what, there's so many Zoom things open on my screen. Let me move some of my Zoom things. I'm surprised I can even see my screen. I have all these.
We can see your screen, very nice. Borel.
But I can't see anything. Oh, there you go. So this is one of the scenarios. Roll 4 6-sided dice and roll a 30-sided dice. And will at least 2 rolls be greater than 5? And so the idea is that you're given a minute to decide. So it's not based on calculation, it's based on your intuition. And then what would do is in the game, you would wager based on how confident you are in your yes or no answer. And then you'd actually roll the dice and see what happens. So it's a fun game, and there's 100 different cards, which means as soon as the game gets here today, after I spend the rest of my day with my wife on her birthday, I'm going to probably be building simulations of these in GeoGebra or Inspire or in Python or something. There is in the upper right corner of my screen on the Borel website, there is a test. And this is a useful little, useful test that you could actually use for some probability resources as well. And this test, if I scroll down, it's actually in the makings of a Google form. And there's also another link down here, one question to rule them all, which was kind of a statistical analysis of this test and what they found, which would be useful to share with a class if you were going to use this. But let me click on this, take the test, and we'll look at a couple of questions. And then maybe we can use one of these questions to illustrate this intuition, simulation, calculation, instructional arc. And I'll get you guys maybe to play along. So if I go in here to take the test, this test was simply a Google form. And if I scroll down, and let me see if I can zoom in a little bit to make it this, for example, here's a scenario. Flip a coin 5 times. I don't like coin problems. Which is more probable? Will you get maybe 3 heads or 3 tails, at least 3 heads in a row, or at least 3 tails in a row? Or will that not happen? Or is it a 50-50? Are they both equally likely? And another scenario, put 9 red balls and 1 blue ball in an urn or a pouch. My kids don't know what an urn is. So I've got to I got to call it like a pouch or a bag or something. Shuffle and take out 3 balls at random. And that is, again, without replacement. So I take 3 balls out. What's more probable? All 3 balls red, or 1 of the 3 balls will be blue? And so here's what, now this next question is the question we are going to do. And Ed, I think your question, yeah. So we're going to we'll build some things in GeoGebra eventually, yes. So here's the question I want you guys to do. And you're going to, so find your chat window. Find your chat window. And you're going to put either a yes or a no or an equal sign in there, like a Y or an N, or maybe a, if you think, because that's all I'm really interested in. And so let's use this question here. So I have a 6-sided die, a 10-sided die, and a 30-sided die. And I roll them in order. I rolled a 6-sided die, then I rolled a 10-sided die, and then I rolled a 30-sided die. I roll them in that order. What do you think the results will be in strictly increasing order? Or do you think they will not be in strictly increasing order? Or do you think they're about roughly the same? So I see a couple of equals so far. So either put a fantastic. You guys are playing along well. I've got some no's. I've got not in order. I've got some equals. I've got some, oh man, this, I must have like an advanced placement class this morning.
Steve, you are so cool.
You guys are awesome. So this is your intuition speaking. And this is why this instructional arc, in my mind, is so important, because you have committed to an outcome. And if you've committed to an outcome, you are probably going to want to stick around to see what the outcome is. I mean, if I just said, sorry, guys, we'll do this next week, you would probably all be quite angry with me. But so now you guys, so let's see, it's actually funny. I've seen a bunch of equals. You can see the same thing. I've seen a couple of equals, a couple of no's, probably equal amounts of equals and no's. I've seen one yes, that it will be in strictly increasing order. So here's what I'd like to do. That's your intuition speaking. Let's kind of play around with our intuition and let's build this scenario in GeoGebra. And I'm going to use one of the GeoGebra apps online, and you can do the same thing. I also know this is going to be super challenging when you're trying to do a software thing and you're trying to follow along in a Zoom. I understand that. So I will go as slow as I can. So I'm going to go to geogebra.org, and I'm going to drop that link in the chat in case you're not sure where to go. So I'm going to go to geogebra.org. And on the main page, I'm going to go in the middle column here where it says ready for tests. And I'm going to choose GeoGebra Classic. The only reason I'm choosing GeoGebra Classic, that's just kind of, I think Ed mentioned this before, it's what I'm used to. And so I'm going to use GeoGebra Classic. Here we go. Here we go. So I'm going to widen my algebra view, my input view on the left-hand side. I'm going to widen that a little bit. And then I tell you what, I thought I'd try to save my settings, but you know something? Sometimes my settings just don't save. Yeah. I don't know why my settings are not saving. So I think I'll see if I can turn that into a 20 point, and we'll see if it saves this time. We're going to find out though, that's for sure. We're going to find out. Oh, that is fantastic. That's good to know. Okay, so here we go. Here we go. Here we go. I want to build in GeoGebra, and by build, I'm using that loosely. I'm going to build 3 dice. I'm going to build a 6-sided dice, a 10-sided dice, and a 30-sided dice. And so what I will do is up here in this first row, I'm going to call the 6-sided dice D6. And if it would be helpful if I can, oh my gosh, I hate when that happens. I did not mean to do that either. Now, let me try that again. Let me delete that and do that again. So I'm going to go D6 equals, and my command is random between. And I never click on those things that pop up. only because I just get frustrated trying to use them. I use them as a guide, but I never click on them. That's just me, because they just never seem to work well for me. So I'm going to go, what I want to use is the first one where I give a minimum integer and a maximum integer. So I'm going to go random between, and then from 1 to 6. And random between is an inclusive between. So it could be a 1, it could also be a 6, and then I'll press enter. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the 10-sided dice. And I think you know what I'm going to call it if you've been following along at home. I will call this D10. And so that will be random between, and I'll go 1 to 10. And it is possible, if you have some very complicated inputs, if I go to those 3 dots on the right side, I could duplicate my input. I'd rather not duplicate my input here. I don't think it's so, it would probably just cause a little more trouble than it's worth with renaming it and everything the way I'm doing it, but you could try that. And my next dice will be D30. And so I'm going to go a random between. I'm going to go from 1 to 30. And so these are my 3 dice. So the only thing that I have to do next is I need to create some sort of a mechanism to roll the dice, because it's really, I mean, I can't shake my screen. So I'm going to add a button that when I click on the button will re-randomize all of my dice. And so so that will roll the dice for me. So the button tool or command is in the is in my toolbar up here and on my screen. If I go to the second button from the right-hand side and I open those tools up, you can see about halfway down, the 4th one down is one that says button. That's the one I want to use. So I'm going to activate it by just clicking on it. And so you'll notice what happened if you're not familiar. Back up here in the toolbar, it's the button one that is showing and is highlighted. And so to use this tool, I'm just going to click somewhere in a white space. So I'm just going to click. Oh, let me do that again. That went kind of quick. I'm going to click over here on the right-hand side somewhere in my graph. And so in a white space or clear space, that typically mean in an area where there is nothing located. I don't want to click on an object. I would just want to click out there in space. So I will click there. And the caption is what is going to, what word is going to appear on the button as a label. And I'm just going to use the word roll followed by an exclamation point. And then I'm going to click down in the script area. And in the script area, just be careful because spelling counts. And again, I'm approaching this from a United States GeoGebra author. So I will apologize in advance. But the command is update construction, all one word with no spaces. You don't need to capitalize the U and the C. It will automatically capitalize for you, but I've just gotten used I've probably typed this command in 100,000 times over the last 10 years. So it's just kind of a habit. So my caption is roll, and my scripting command is update construction. And so I'm going to click OK when I'm done. And then before I do anything else, before you do anything else in GeoGebra, if you use a tool, that tool will stay active forever until you put your tool away. And so I always told that to my kids, put your tools away when you're done. There's 2 ways you can make that happen. I can either go up here in my toolbar and click on the pointy arrow on the far left side, or I can press escape on my keyboard, and either one will probably work. The escape did not work for me, so I'm going to click on the move, because that tool will stay active. And if you try to click on the button, it's thinking that you're going to want to make a new button. And so if you click on the roll button, you should see that your dice are re-randomizing. And go ahead and play with that for a second. And I will play with it for a second here. And again, strictly increasing means that whatever's on D6 is less than what is on D10. And whatever is on D10 is less than whatever is on D30. So if you have created your roll button, go through and click that a couple of times. And let me know if you would like to change your answer. Do you still think the probability of being strictly increasing and not strictly increasing is equal? Or do you think it's more likely now that they'll be strictly increasing? Because that's strictly increasing. Strictly increasing again. Not strictly increasing. Strictly, I don't know. I don't know. Increasing. So yeah, so so I wonder if, is that a change? Is that a change from what you originally thought? Yeah, good. So here's my thought. This is still somewhat anecdotal. In other words, we're hitting this roll button, but I'm unable, have not collected like my data, because I click on it and I'm thinking, okay, that's increasing. It's like it seems like it increases more than it doesn't. But does it? Lebo, exactly, man, exactly. But the thing is, Lebo, is you guys are all, you've all made you're going to stick around because you've all committed to like a yes or a no or an equal. So you're going to stick around to the end. But the end is going to be in about 15 minutes. So here's what I want to do next. Here's what I want to do next. I want to make a little check. I want to add something to my list over here that will kind of keep a record for me. Your roll button. So let's see. Make a couple of common mistakes in random between. Make sure there is no space between the N and the parentheses when they start. So that'd be my one. I think that's Laura who suggested that. Just make sure there's no space in between, or no space between the M and the B. Random between, all in one word. That's one thing. That's one thing I've seen in the past. And in the roll button, let me click on my. Oh my gosh, there are so many Zoom things. Let me right click and go to the settings and go to the script. Just make sure the same thing. The update construction. Make sure you are in. When you go to the settings this way, just make sure the update construction is the same way. Make sure there's parentheses at the end, but you probably should have gotten some sort of an error message. If there wasn't, make sure it's spelled correctly, but you probably would have gotten an error message as well. And make sure it's when you're here, make sure it's on the on click tab, not the on update tab. But don't fret, don't fret. So Laura, you'll need to add that button on here. So the button is up here in the, so you'll need to add that button for yourself. So when I go to the button, and I click on the button, then I can add it. And that's where I put in the role for my caption and update construction for my script. I will. There's only one thing in it. We're going to add something to this in a second. So that's the only thing that I have right now is update construct. Oh my gosh, that was not what I wanted to do. So update construction is the only thing that is in my script.
Sorry, Steve, this is an interesting question. Does the GeoGebra command change with the language that you are using? The GeoGebra commands, yes, but scripting commands, I don't think they're changed.
That, yeah, I really do not know. I know that I've changed I was trying to learn Spanish a couple of years ago. I changed the language to Spanish. So all my buttons were in Spanish. So I don't know. I need to think about this. Okay, they are perfect. Thank you, Alicia. Okay, let's move on. Let's move on. Here's what I want to do next. Here's what I want to do next. All right. I want to create like a little kind of a command down here at the bottom, or a checker, if you will, that will check for us if the roles are in strictly increasing order. And if they are, I want to return the number 1. If they're not, I want to return the number 0. This is not typically what I would do with my students in a class. I would probably use the words first, but for the sake of time, we're going to use 0s and 1. So my command is, I'm going to go ahead and give this a name. I'll call this lowercase c for check. And there's 2 parts to this. If D6 is less than D10, and now that went quick. That went quick. It's the ampersand for, I guess for an American keyboard, this would be the ampersand is above the 7 key, and I hit 2 of those. So I do, there's my first ampersand, or shift 7, and I do it one more time. That's 2 ampersands back to back. That gives me the and. I think that is like that is probably a JavaScripting thing, is the 2 ampersands back and forth. And then the next part is I want D10 to be strictly less than D30. And so those are that's my condition. And if both of those conditions are met, or that one long, if D6 is less than D10 and D10 is less than D30, I want to return the number 1. Else, another comma, I want to return the number 0. And what this will allow us to do is we're going to take those numbers in a little bit. We're going to put these numbers into some other place that we can kind of keep a tally over what is happening in our simulation. Because I want to get away from this anecdotal, here's a roll, here's a roll, here's a roll. I want to try to make a whole bunch of rolls at one time if we can. So I'm going to press return. And so every time I press my button, so now my check number is a 1, then it's a 0, then it's a 0, then it's a 1. So that's 2 and 2, 3 and 2, 3 and 3, 3 and 4, 3 and 5. So it seems like I'm getting a lot of zeros. So yes, I'm kind of thinking about the and. I'm kind of thinking in terms of programming, and I want that to be super. I want that to be super, super clear as to what is happening. But yes, you can put that in one straight order. That is true. From a kid point of view, I think that it makes things cloudy, makes things less unsure. I like to do it. I'm taking this thing and this thing. Both of those have to be the same. but that's just my 2 cents, my 2 cents. So here's what I want to do next. Here's what I want to do next. Oh, this is perfect. This is perfect. We have 10 minutes. We're going to finish this. So here's what I want to do. Here's what I want to do next. Every time I click on that button, every time I click on it, I want to take this number that I've named C, and I want to put it into another list. And so I need to create this list, and I'm going to call for ours. I like to use the capital letter D, D standing for data. And so I'm going to go equals, and then I'll use a curly brace, and I'll press enter. So I've created a place to put the number C. So every time I click on the button, I want this number C to be stuck into that list. And so that way I can kind of keep track of all of my button pushes and if the rolls were strictly increasing or were not strictly increasing. So here's what I'm going to do. We need to add one line of GeoGebra script to our button. So I am going to, I'm on a Windows device and I've got a mouse rolling here. So I'm going to right click. I'm going to right click on the button. Well, actually at one time, Python was a part of GeoGebra. Those were the days. I'm going to right click on the button and I'm going to go down to settings. And I'm going to click on the settings and I'm going to widen my settings window a little bit so you can see the settings, and I'm going to go to the scripting. So this is the script that is currently in the button. The update construction re-randomizes all of my random commands. So that is the magic of rolling the dice. After I roll the dice, I am checking to see if they're in strictly increasing order. So what I would like to do next is I want to add a command which will put that number C, that my check number, and it will put the result of that into that set D. And so the command looks like this: set value, open a parenthesis, no spaces are there. I've got no spaces anywhere. I'm going to set the value of my list D. I put a comma. And then the command to stick something into the list is called append. A-P-P-E-N-D. And I open up another parenthesis. So append, capital D again, to that list. I'm going to append. The number I'm going to stick in is my number C. And then I have to close up my two parentheses. Now let's talk just quickly before I go, oh man, that got really big in a hurry. So this is the command I added. What it's going to do, it's going to set the value of my list D. It's going to make it equal to itself with C tucked in on the end. Every time I press the button, it's going to roll my dice and it's going to stick the check number into the list D.
And Steve, while you're just finishing that, once you're done with this, can you show people where to find all the commands and where they can look at all of that stuff on there?
Yes. Yes, I will. Oh my goodness gracious. Yes. Not in here. Oh, hold on. I've got a dozen things open up here on my screen. So there you go. So now I have to move a bunch of things around. That's a great question. No. Well, here's typically what I do. I'll do it this way. Because usually I get to it from the keyboard.
If you go to view,
Yeah.
add the input bar.
Oh yeah, there you go. I'll do that. That's fine. Over here on the right-hand side. That's kind of a pain. And so all of mine are down here at the, like in the script is typically where I would find those. But anything, I like every button has a command. Every button has a command. All right, let me close this. Let me close this, and I'm gonna unhide my input bar again. So perfect. So here's what I'm gonna do. So let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. Ready? When I roll my dice, let me go down here to my list. So every time I click roll, it should just be putting those numbers in. And if I would like, this is why I used ones and zeros. If I would like to know how many times the rolls were in strictly increasing order, I can just take the sum of list D. And so right now, 7 times the dice were in strictly increasing order. If I want to know how many total rolls I have done, I can just go the length of D. The length of D tells me how many elements are actually in that list. And so that's 7 out of 18. And so if I keep pressing the rolls, I could quickly get to 100. And I won't get to do that part on the button because we're just going to run out of time and I don't want to lose folks. So I will, if I go to 50, it seems to be suspiciously close to around 50%, kind of like an equal, like roughly 24 out of 50. And if you have to kind of do this slowly. If I go to 60, it's right on 50%. So I'm wondering if those two results are roughly the same, So here is what we could do. Let's do our calculation part. So we've done we've kind of built a simulation, not as nice as I'd like it to be. And Luis said, you can certainly email me offline and we can kind of discuss that, or I can create some sort of video to help you out with that, man. So here's what I would do. I want to actually, we'll see if we can make this work. Let's see if we can make this work. Let me see how much time I have. If I have enough time. No, I'm not going to do that because I'd be rushing.
Oh, no, don't. You may do it instead of Q&A because, Steve, you don't have a lot of Q&A. People are fascinated. They don't type anything. Just go on.
Here's what I'm going to do. Yes.
And Steve, I just found out in the Q&A, somebody typed in that if you click the keyboard, there's 3 dots in the keyboard that you can see all the commands with as well.
See, I had that covered up. I moved one of my Zoom items down to the lower left corner of my screen, but it covered up my keyboard button right here on the left-hand side. That's what you mean there. And then there are 3 vertical dots. That's what I look for typically. Yep. Good call. Good call. Frickin' Zoom. Anyway, let me close that out. So here's what I want to do. So we've done intuition. And I think you've seen your intuition change, and now it might change again because I'm looking at this right now and it seems like it's about 50%. It seems like about half the time they're going to be in strictly increasing order, but maybe we could actually figure this out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to make a list of all the rolls of the dice. And I'm going to do this using 3 sequence commands and a flatten command. And the reason I'm using a flatten command is because it will look it kind of would make a matrix, and I don't want that. So I'm going to start out with a flatten. And again, that's a suggestion. I'm just going to keep going and put in my parentheses. And then I'm going to put in the sequence command one time. That will be for like my 6-sided die. And then I'll put my sequence command in again for the 10-sided die. And I'll put a sequence command in again. And then really what I'm interested in is I want all possible rolls. So I will use, I'll go U, comma V, comma W. Those are going to be my dummy variables. And U will go from 1 to 6. And then V will go from 1 to 10. And I'll jump outside of those. And then W will go from 1 to 30. So what this sequence of, I shouldn't have used the word sequence again. This is going to create a list of ordered triples that will represent all the different rolls that you could have systematically. So when I press return, and the flatten command, if I did not have a flatten command, I would have lists inside of lists inside of lists. And the flatten command actually makes it so that it's not a list inside a list inside a list. And so we will do the trick that who pointed that out. We'll give that a try. And we'll see if we can just make like a chain. Antonio, I think, did that. So you can put D6 less than D10 less than D30. So what I'm interested in is I'm going to use another if command. So should I use it? I think I will not use an if command. I think I'm going to use a sequence command again. And what I'm interested in is I just want to, yes. If the x coordinate of L1, and I'll use a dummy command, is less than the y coordinate. I probably didn't have to use the if of L1, use my dummy command, is less than the z coordinate of L1. That's my dummy command again. If that is the case, I want to return 1. Also, I want to return 0. And I want my u to go from 1 to the length of L1. That's the number of things in that list. So let's take a gander at this for a second. So what I'm checking on I'm going through each one of these ordered triples, and I just want to see if they're in strictly increasing order. There's probably a better way to do that, but this works for right now. And let's see what happens. And what I should have is a whole bunch of lists of 0s and 1. It would be a 1 if it's strictly increasing. It would be a 0 if it's not strictly increasing, and it will be an error message if it doesn't work or if there's a syntax error. And if that's the case, we'll stop there anyway. Oh, man. Okay, so there's a whole lot of zeros right in a row. And that makes sense because those first numbers have a 1 in the last spot. And so what I want to do is I want to take the sum of those numbers in L2, and that is how many rolls, 896, that is how many rolls are actually strictly increasing. And so if I just take that, if I go 896 and I divide it, I know that there are 1,800 different rolls. And oh man, it's about 0.5. It is about 0.5. So all of you who your intuition said that they were about equal, you guys were right on. And if those who changed your initial position because of those anecdotal rolls, that's okay. That's only natural. But it seems to me it's like right about 50%. So that's it for me. That was more than a lot of stuff there. I apologize if it went much faster than it needed to be. If you want to shoot me an email or hit me up on Twitter, either one of those will work. Love to work with you on this. There's some other things you could add to kind of generate 100 trials with a button press, which is what I've done. And I've got links to my March randomness simulations in there as well. And when I get the Borel game, I'll put those in GeoGebra too. So, man, that's all I got. Is there anything in the Q&A?
Steve, wonderful speech. I was really mesmerized. I think a lot of people, and from the number of people who are sticking around, I don't think anybody drop. So you made you taught us how to keep our students to be interested in what we do. I don't think my lecture looks like yours. Thank you so much. It was so cool. Very nice example. And and also you show, I love it, if I may say, in my opinion, that you are showing the GeoGebra as a tool for doing mathematics. You can do it in many ways. Yes, you could have done it in many ways. You did it your way, using the scripts and so on, but it could be some simpler maybe ways, but doing mathematics, this is your aim. Yes, it's math. Yes, I really like that. I really like that. And everybody say thank you. Is any specific question for Steve here? Do we see any specific